out in the field, isn't it?
Cam Proctor with Big Gold Bell Media. We are here with Jim Cooper and Jeff Dixon, creators and executive producers of Curses from DreamWorks Animation, premiering October 4th, only on Apple TV Plus. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Great.
Doing great. Thanks for
Good,
having
good,
us.
good. Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here, honestly. So I got to check out the first couple episodes of Curses, and listen, I'm absolutely loving it right now. I'm excited for it to drop so my kids can check it out. Might have given them a little sneak peek the other day, and they're really excited to check it out. Honestly, it's really great. I'm loving the family dynamic, and it just seems like a show for all the ages, which is something that we really don't have out there right now. So I guess my first question is, what were some of the, I guess, growing up inspirations behind putting this together, this show? You can go with Jim first.
Well, it's funny. So Jeff and I were not originally writing partners. We've had like full other careers independent of one another. And we
Right.
actually met one another at our kids' school.
Oh,
Like
wow.
we
Okay.
literally like drop them off to school and then walk back the same direction. And it just sort of went from there. We were like talking about our different careers and stuff. And the short version of it is Jeff has been mostly in horror most of his career.
Mhm.
And I've done a lot of animation and family stuff. And we were always talking, it'd be great to do a horror family animation,
Yeah.
thing. And secondly, with having kids, we know how important it is to make shows that we as adults also want to watch.
Right. Right.
So it was kind of, this really was, how do we incorporate all that we love and that we would want to watch it too with our families?
Yeah. 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 I agree. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, we always said from the get-go, we didn't ever want to just make a show for kids. We wanted to make a show for everyone that was acceptable for kids.
Right.
So it was something that we always saw this as a co-viewing, adults, kids, everybody in between. And that was kind of what a lot of those shows that we grew up with were like, Goonies, Gremlins,
Right.
all that kind of gateway scary stuff that we loved. And we're like, this is the kind of stuff we want to do. So really that's what we leaned into for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it was very reminiscent of Johnny Quest, as well as with a little bit of Wild Thornberries in there. So I was really excited to watch it. Honestly, this is something I could watch without or with my kids if I choose to. So I think that's
Exactly.
that's absolutely amazing. So we got in there. There are a couple big names I would say in there as well. We have Stanley, who is played by Reese Darby, as well as Larry, who's voiced by James Marster. So everybody knows from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course, growing up. And there are the caretakers of the restricted wing in this series. Was there any inspiration between those very two specific characters? Because for me, I had to do some research on seeing like the animation of these characters, right? So of course, Larry seemed more like Blackbeard, decapitated, and then we also have Stanley, who reminds me of like a Celtic Norse Viking type statue. But was there like any specific things in historical, I guess, data that you guys really pulled that from?
Um, Short answer.
Yeah.
Short answer, no.
Okay.
Short answer is we created them from a mashup of a lot of different things.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just one specific thing. But saying that, we have written, because those two characters in particular are kind of the most near and dear to our heart,
Mhm.
because we joke a lot that they're us in real life,
Right.
that Cooper is Stanley and I'm Larry, and it's like there's a little bit of each of us in those characters. So we have written very extensive histories and backstories of who they are, where they came from, what their origin is, not necessarily to ever make it into the show, just to help us know who those characters are. And so I think that we had such a personal connection with them. And a lot of other people have said, oh, they remind me of Laurel and Hardy or
Mhm.
C3PO and R2D2, or
Right.
they throw out all these. But to be perfectly honest, we didn't have any of those duos in our mind outside of a little bit of our own personalities. I will let Cooper talk more a little bit more about the historical part of things, because
Well,
that's definitely his thing.
the funny thing is, we literally, they really kind of came about where we realized, like, on a story point of view, we needed some characters who actually understood the cursed artifacts and understood
Right.
what the family was going through and then been there for a while.
Right.
And we were like, oh, it'd actually be great if they were artifacts.
Yeah.
And then, truth be told, like with Larry being a skull, that kind of came about as we're going to throw out something no way the powers that be are going to be cool with.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's just a head.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
it. He's just a head. And we were like so waiting for like the studio to go, haha, very funny guys. No way. And they're like, that's great. And we were kind of like, oh wow. And then honestly, in like the character design, you sit there and you're like going, how do you animate a skull? Oh,
Right.
a beard, the braids. And the funny thing is, like his braids are a great example of the animators animating them in such a way I did not realize that would be one of my favorite things about his character, like him using them as arms. So it's really interesting how like something can start from like just a story point, but then the character design, the voice,
Right.
you know, like when James and Reese came in and did the voice, you're like, oh my gosh, that's them.
Yeah.
And then it was fantastic. At that point, you write for that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I no, no. That was put great, both of you. Honestly, because I think one of my notes that I wrote down in here is that watching Stanley with beard arms as well as crawling around with his hair, like moving around, like remind me of Adam's Family thing, moving around, but something totally different, like you said, that the powers that be would never allow, for it to happen. Which makes it outrageous, but also makes it very captivating as well to watch. I feel like honestly, if we were later on down the road to just get a Larry and Stanley series on its own, it could stand alone on its own. I'm serious. Like it's I mean, the Vanderhoovens are in here, but it's like, you know what? I feel like the main people I'm focused on are Larry and Stanley. They're taking the show for sure. What was some of the, I guess, the creative writing process like? Was this like a day-to-day process, or you guys said, you kind of just met based on your kid's school and just came together, but um do you have, I guess, you have something written for the future, right? Or is this just something that you go season by season kind of looking at?
Well, it's okay. The funny thing is there is a big difference between season one and season two. Like season one, in a lot of ways, Jeff and I had written a lot of the episodes because it took a long time for the show to get made
Right.
and gearing up, brought in the writer's room and, fleshed out the season and wrote a lot of the episodes.
Right.
The great thing, the difference between season two and season one is season two, we really sat down with the room.
Right.
And it's like, let's make it personal for you guys.
Right.
What are your stories that you want to tell? Let's come together as a group to figure out the arc. But what are things that you would want to do? Because it's an unusual like setup.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories that you can do that you couldn't do on any other show. So how to make it personal for them. And that was fantastic, opening up to even a greater group.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was really interesting for us is, I mean, this show, we had been developing it for many years.
Mhm.
And we bumped up against COVID, and we bumped, there were a lot of like just things. So there was a lot of, because of that, I said earlier that we built a lot of extensive backstories and histories for the characters. Well, we also have a lot of million ideas about where the show was going to go and future seasons if possible, and what this and what that. So we probably overwrote everything. And then once we got into the actual production, it became such a collaborative thing that a lot of that just got kind of pushed aside. And it was like, oh, the animators just said, what about this? And we're like, great idea. And the storyboard artist said, oh, this is cool. Oh, great idea. Then the executives would come up with an idea, and we're like, hey, that's a great idea. So
Yeah.
it became such a collaborative thing, and everybody was so passionate about it that we never said no to any idea. We'd hear an idea from anybody and everybody, and a lot of those helped move the directions of the second season different from the first, and that was what I think what was so fulfilling about the second season is it did feel so much more collaborative, not just from the writers' room, but from every single person on the entire crew.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? I'm excited to get through all the rest, and I know people at home, once this thing gets wind, it is going to absolutely take off. Everyone at home, make sure you check out Curses from DreamWorks Animation, premiering October 4th, only on Apple TV Plus. Jeff and Jim, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Wish you both the best.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.